The hallway was silent, unnaturally so. Not the kind of quiet that comes when everyone's asleep, but the kind that feels like the walls themselves are waiting, holding their breath. Inside the guest room, the floor creaked once. Then nothing. Armin stood at the door, his hand resting on the old brass handle. He didn't knock. He didn't have to. He knew what was happening on the other side. They had both agreed. His other hand clenched a knife. Not the large one. Not yet. Just the paring blade. Stainless steel. Clean. Sharp. Familiar. He ran his thumb slowly along the edge, pressing down just enough to feel the sting. It calmed him. He pushed the door open. The man sitting on the bed looked up. He was naked, calm, knees drawn to his chest like a child. He didn't flinch at the sight of the knife. He smiled. "You ready?" Armin asked. The man nodded. "Are you?" Armin hesitated. The light in the room was warm, almost too cozy for what they were about to do. The floral wallpaper, the framed cross-stitch on the wall. Home is where the heart is. It felt absurd, but it also felt perfect. He stepped in and closed the door behind him. Bernd Jürgen Brandes hadn't always been this kind of man. Once he wore suits. Once he had a corner office and gave digital product presentations to board executives. He was polished, efficient, forgettable. But now he felt alive. Stripping off the layers of identity had become an obsession. He no longer wanted to be someone. He wanted to be something. He stared at Armin. This man would help him do it. He had found the ad 3 weeks earlier. Looking for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. It wasn't a joke. He could tell. The phrasing, the punctuation, the sincerity, it called to something deep in him. Something he couldn't explain. Something he didn't want to. He responded, "I offer myself to you completely. Use me. Eat me. Kill me." Armin replied within the hour. In the kitchen, a small red light blinked on the camera. Recording. Armin checked it twice. The tripod stood steady on the kitchen tiles. He'd positioned it carefully, rehearsed the frame. It had to feel real. He wanted it all documented. Proof of consent, he'd whispered to himself. But it was more than that. This wasn't just about legality. It was about immortality. About capturing something no one else dared touch. Something pure, terrifying, and transcendent. He looked into the lens, then walked back upstairs. They sat at the kitchen table now, 2 men stripped down to skin, as if shedding clothing would make the act easier. Bernd's lips trembled. Not from fear. From anticipation. He wanted this. He was sure. "Are you going to do it now?" he asked. "Not yet," Armin said. "We have to take the pills first. To stop the pain." Bernd nodded. He swallowed the tablets without water. Dozens of them. Codeine, sleeping pills, something else Armin wouldn't name. His hands shook. Not from nerves. From adrenaline. He leaned forward. "I want to watch while you start," he whispered. Armin didn't respond. He just stood up and retrieved the knife. 2 hours later, the bathtub was filled with warm water, slowly turning pink. Bernd lay motionless in it, eyes fluttering in a haze of drugs and blood loss. The pain had made him scream once. Just once. Then it faded. He was smiling again. "I can't believe this is real," he mumbled. "I can't believe you're doing it." Armin knelt beside the tub. "I promised." There was silence. Then Bernd whispered, barely audible, "Eat me." And Armin obeyed. 3 days passed. The neighbors didn't notice anything. The house was quiet, just like it always had been. Armin had never been the type to throw parties. He was polite, mowed his lawn, waved. No one knew he was storing parts of a man in his freezer. No one knew he had spent the last 2 nights watching the tape, over and over again. He cried the second time, not from guilt, not from regret, but from the overwhelming sense of completion. This was what he had waited his entire life for. This was love, in its most unfiltered, brutal form. He had consumed someone who wanted to be consumed. There was no shame, no sin, just devotion. The arrest didn't come for months. It started with a chatroom post. Armin went back online. He couldn't help himself. The hunger returned. The hole in his chest widened. He posted another ad. The second man never showed up, but he told someone. And that someone told the police. Inside the house, the tape was still in the camera, unlabeled. The detectives didn't know what they were watching at first. The screen was dark for several seconds. Then the kitchen lights flickered on, and the scene played out in chilling clarity. Two men, calm, casual, conversing like old friends. Then pain, blood, breathing, moaning, flesh, stillness. The room fell silent when the video ended. One officer turned away and vomited in the sink. Another asked, "Who in the hell would let someone do that to them?" No one answered. Later, when they found the freezer, the contents were cataloged in silence. Labeled Ziploc bags, vacuum sealed, dated, as if it were meal prep. Inside one of them, a note. "Thank you for loving me enough to do this. B." The courtroom wasn't packed. This wasn't America, with its hungry media and primetime court coverage. This was Kassel, Germany. Quiet, reserved, almost too polite to speak of what had happened. But the press came anyway, because the details refused to stay buried. Because once someone says the word cannibal, nobody forgets. Armin sat in the defendant's chair, spine straight, hands folded like a schoolboy. He wore a beige sweater. His hair was combed. If you didn't know what he'd done, you might think he looked kind. Some people said he was. The judge had already warned the gallery. "There will be evidence and testimony of a disturbing nature," he'd said. What he didn't say was that the tape would be played. Only once. Only for the court. No journalists. No recordings. No cameras. Just the room, the jury, and the horror that lived inside a home once decorated with lace curtains and needlepoint. The video rolled. Baron's voice filled the room. "I offer myself freely." His tone was calm. Even. He looked into the camera with a strange serenity. One woman in the back row began to cry. The defense team said nothing, because that tape was the heart of their case. Consent. Armin never denied what he did. He described it in detail. "I picked him up from the train station," he said. "We talked. We drank. He wanted to go through with it. I reminded him he could change his mind at any time." He looked directly at the judge. "I even gave him a chance to leave." "Did you force him?" the prosecutor asked. "No." "Did you pressure him?" "No." "Did you eat part of his body?" "Yes." His voice didn't waver. Baron's parents were not present. They had stopped attending the hearings. The last thing his mother had said to reporters was, "That man did not kill my son. My son chose to die." She wasn't defending Armin. She just couldn't carry the weight of both monsters. Psychiatrists were called in. Two testified. The first said Armin suffered from schizoid personality disorder, that he was emotionally disconnected, detached from normal human bonds, that his fantasy life had fused with reality long ago. But he wasn't insane, just deeply alone. The second disagreed. He had a delusion, she argued. He believed this act made him complete, that consuming someone made him whole. But he planned it, the judge noted. She nodded. Yes, he's not psychotic. He's organized. When asked why he posted the ad again, Armin blinked. He paused, searching for the right words. "I missed him," he finally said. "He gave me something no one else could. I thought maybe I could find it again." The room went still, not out of shock, but something deeper. Recognition. Some in the courtroom realized in that moment, this wasn't just depravity. This wasn't evil in the cartoonish, sensational sense. This was human loneliness, carved to the bone. The jury deliberated for hours. Not over what happened, that was clear, but over what it meant. If someone offers themselves to be killed and eaten, if they write letters, sign papers, speak to a camera, if they die in the very way they asked to, is it murder? The final verdict came like a slow exhale. Guilty, but not of murder. Armin Meiwes was convicted of manslaughter and disturbing the peace of the dead. He was sentenced to 8.5 years. The world blinked. 8.5 years for cannibalism? But the court didn't care what the tabloids thought. They cared about law, and the law had no precedent for this. He served his time quietly. No fights. No complaints. He read books, tended a small prison garden, gave interviews, carefully. When asked if he regretted it, he always said, "I regret the pain it caused others, but not what we shared." Years later, a retrial was ordered. Germany changed its mind. The tape, once used to defend him, was now used against him. The new court ruled that Bernd was incapable of consenting to his death, that drug use and mental illness made him unfit to make that choice. Armin was resentenced. Life in prison. He didn't argue. He didn't flinch. He simply nodded, as if he had expected this all along. As if he knew that society could never let someone like him go free, even if he only ever killed once. There was no public outcry, no mass protests, just a quiet return to obscurity. The home where it happened was sold, then resold. The bathtub was ripped out. The kitchen floor was replaced. But the story never faded, because it wasn't just about death. It was about what happens when human intimacy and human horror collide. When someone says, "I want to be consumed," and someone else says, "I love you enough to do it." The prison walls didn't rattle. There were no screams in the night, no riots, no monster chained in a cell. Just rows of men, most convicted of murder, theft, rape, and one who waited patiently to die behind steel and silence. Armin Meiwes had become routine, orderly, predictable, even respected. He worked in the library. He tutored inmates in basic German. He kept to himself. But when new prisoners arrived and heard his name, the reaction was always the same. Eyes widened. Mouths dropped. "You're the cannibal." One inmate once asked him, whispering, trembling, "Did it taste like pork?" Armin paused. "No." "What then?" He smiled faintly. "More delicate. Softer." The inmate never spoke to him again. Over time, Armin's notoriety faded. New crimes took the spotlight. New monsters wore the crown of headlines. But the hunger, that hunger, never left him. He said so in his fourth interview. "I still think about it," he admitted. "Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes in silence. I still miss him." "Would you do it again?" He looked down. "I would rather find love another way." "Do you think that's possible now?" He didn't answer. Psychologists visited him often. Some wanted to study him. Some wanted to understand. One brought him a stack of writings, old texts on autophagy, self-sacrifice, ancient rituals where tribes believed consuming the dead was an act of respect, of spiritual continuation. He read each one slowly. He didn't speak until the last page. "See," he whispered, "I wasn't the first." The truth was, he had always been lonely. Even as a boy, he imagined people inside him. Not metaphorically, literally. That if he could consume someone, they would never leave. His father had left early. His mother never looked him in the eyes when she spoke. Meals were rituals, not nourishment. He learned to eat slowly, to savor, to pretend food was company. After his mother died, he inherited the house. Alone for the first time, he went online. At first, it was harmless. Message boards, chat rooms, fantasy fiction. But then someone mentioned the taboo. Not murder, not death, voluntary death. He felt something inside him click. Not rage, not madness, just recognition. He never planned to hurt someone who didn't ask. That was his rule. No violence without consent. He believed in love. His own twisted version of it. Years passed in prison. The outside world moved on. But now and then, a letter arrived. Some begged him to rot. Others praised him for his honesty. A few asked if he was still hungry. Those letters were destroyed, but not unread. In his 60s now, his hair gray, his hands thinner, Armin rarely speaks unless spoken to. But when he does, his voice still carries the same calm. Not cold, not cruel, just sure. In the end, there were no more interviews. The media lost interest. The world filed him away as the cannibal, a grotesque footnote in the long, messy archive of human darkness. But the story, the real story, was never about gore. It was about loneliness so deep it made people volunteer for death. It was about a man who believed that to eat someone was the purest form of intimacy, and about a world that couldn't decide if that was madness or just a mirror. If this story made you think, share it. because someone else needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true stories that will leave you questioning everything.